All right, welcome to the Liberating Joy Learning Podcast. I'm Robert Beckstrand, and last time we began a discussion of the Tuning into Learning Seasons primary lens. And today we're going to explain how to recognize the different actions prompted by different seasons. Now, if we look at what feels like the key categories of actions that support our learning claims, we find what Michael Schneider calls 4 levels or centers of gravity. Which are actions that help us balance out our learning activities. Each of these 4 categories help us mentally cover all our bases and strengthen our confidence that we are succeeding in our learning efforts. Jim Loehr and Tony Schwartz, in their book, The Power of Full Engagement, explain that because it is so difficult for the mind to hold contradictory impulses, our tendency is to choose up sides, valuing certain emotional skills while neglecting and even disparaging others. Similarly, we often favor certain actions while pursuing our learning claims. Understanding learning seasons helps us avoid this tendency to favor one kind of action over another and gives us confidence while in the thick of life to choose seemingly contradictory actions for the same growing desire at different times. So, question is, when have you realized that an action wasn't helping you reach a goal?
So, a few years ago, we were, the kids and I decided to tackle a project of weeding a whole big section of kind of gravel rock in our home in Mesa. And the first day, we made some progress or whatever. And the second day we went out and I was getting started, my son came along and the thought hit me. And clearly the previous day was probably not as one of my stellar parenting days. And the thought came to me, now, you can be nice to him and he will help you, or you can be mean and he probably won't be as effective. And it just occurred to me that, there's a lot of different things that we do as parents, but getting our kids to work, it's typically not good to nag them or use that strong, you have to do this kind of thing. It just doesn't
not
work.
All the time, yes.
Right. So in that instance, I realized, that kind of parenting at that moment was not going to be the best. Right. But in that was the moment where I realized, okay, this action is not going to be as helpful.
Right.
And I'm grateful for the thought that was just, hey, let's consider something else.
Right.
Now is the time for our listeners to consider.
Yes.
When have you had an action that you were doing that you were like, this is really not helping me reach my goal?
Right.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Well, some of our frustrations in life come from staying in one season too long. Looking for a new season is one way to deal with those. Marianne Williamson says that passive energy without active energy becomes lazy, but active energy without passive energy becomes tyrannous, which is a very interesting correlation, I think. We all know the adage, silence is golden, meaning that there is value in choosing not to speak. But we can't follow that all the time or we would miss opportunities to have a positive influence on others. And that's just one example of how actions can feel contradictory when seeking our learning claims. Now, what contradictions have you found in your learning actions is the next question.
Right. So I was digging through some of my, at some point we'll talk about growing vistas, but I have a small notebook of them. And the one about helping plants grow. And I came up with 4 categories, and they have one category, one season of action would be to clean out like the weeds and things like that, right?
Right.
Another season is to feed or water. Another one is to plant, repot, or move around, right? That all related to starting something or moving, the location of that plant, right? And then the last one is just to enjoy. And the enjoy feels sort of, what? Are you really doing anything? But there is a time, kind of like the silence is golden thing, where you just enjoy it. And, or you talking to the plants, right? You're just enjoying them and you kind of get to know them better in some way, right? Like that. And so that one felt contradictory, but that was the action that I felt like needed to go in that place.
Right.
And so learning claim, when we have our learning claim, there's going to be actions like we mentioned earlier that we don't recognize as valuable.
Right.
But when we start looking for seasonal action in relation to our learning claims, then we see more actions that we can do.
Right.
Another advantage to looking for new seasons in our learning is that sometimes we discover needs or opportunities that we haven't noticed before. In high school, I learned the value of breathing out while running so I didn't get cramps. A few years ago, I was learning about Qigong exercises, and I learned about the value of breathing in, of symbolically and physically welcoming in goodness from the world around me as I breathed in. I now rejoice in opportunities to joyfully breathe in goodness. So certain situations in my life when I'm grateful, when I'm happy, or I'm in a situation where I'm happier, when I start a bike ride, I always do this big, deep sigh of relief because riding a bike is one of my happy places.
Right.
So I learned the value of breathing in. That has applications to my goal that I mentioned previously to improve my posture. As I've considered different seasons of breathing, including the power of intentionally breathing in and out, I've improved my ability to retain better posture. So I recognize opportunities. I'm going to breathe in really good now and straighten my posture. So I do that all at the same time, kind of connect those. Tuning into different learning seasons, recognizing different kinds of actions that help us fulfill our growing desires, balances and inspires our efforts to fulfill our growing desires.
Right.
So James Clear gives two different examples of learning seasons in his book, Atomic Habits. First, he says, the process of building a habit can be divided into 4 simple steps: cue, craving, response, and reward. Close quote. In other words, we recognize a cue that we want to improve. We find a craving or need to fulfill. We choose a response, and then we enjoy the reward of making better choices. So there's one example of 4 seasons in your learning.
Right.
Another example he gives is, quote, the 4 laws of behavior change are a simple set of rules we can use to build better habits. They are 1, make it obvious; 2, make it attractive; 3, make it easy; and 4, make it satisfying. So there's another example of, the goal is to build better habits, right? And these are different actions that you choose. You're intentionally making it obvious. You're intentionally making it attractive. You're intentionally making it easy and then making it satisfying. And as you do that, then that has power to help you reach those goals. Right. By taking time to do all 4 of those in one way or another. So what seasons of action have you found in your life other than actions that the earthly seasons prompt, right? So with our seasons, in the winter we wear coats, and in the summer we wear shorts and t-shirts, whatever. But what other seasons of actions have you found?
Right. Well, I think this whole learning, and I have an answer for that, but I want to a preamble to that is this whole learning, this whole primary lens of seasons is it not only applies to learning, and I think as we understand and recognize seasons as they come, it'll help us recognize seasons when we're in our learning.
Sure.
For instance, like right now, we are in the midst of a marriage season with our oldest daughter. She's getting married, and that is been. I think we're right now in the summer stormy stage of this season. It's just getting closer, and so I mean, we love her to bits, but she's not as crazy as you see like the TV shows about the bridezillas and things like that. But she does have her moments that cause a little bit of consternation. But that is a very defined season that we are looking forward to the end of the winter of the season when the wedding finally comes. But understanding
this is my silence is golden moment.
Right.
I'm going to let Rob speak his piece.
But
here.
This season, I think, is because she's not our first to get married, but she's our first daughter to get married.
Right.
And so it's a completely different environment, completely different season than when our son got married. And it's through a whole set of different reasoning. But I think it's an opportunity to learn so that when the next 4 come up,
right,
that they're all going to be different, but at least we've learned. Hopefully we're going to learn something from this process.
Right, but we're recognizing what season she's in. We're recognizing what season her fiance is in, so that we can act accordingly and help them with what they're learning now, and not expecting them to act like they would in a different season.
Right.
But we're understanding the season they're in. It gives us, certainly this gives us a lot more compassion for other people.
Right.
And the seasons of learning that they're in.
Right, exactly. And so I think that's very important for us to recognize, like you said, it's not just the earthly spring, summer, winter, fall seasons, but and this season is going to last for 4 months, since They were
Yeah.
engaged when they actually get married, and so it's a very, very short season, but it's a very important one that you can learn a lot from, so that when another season presents itself, whether it's through intentionally seeking for learning and growth, or it's thrust upon you, but through outside. I mean, for this one, it was thrust upon us through our daughter getting engaged. So.
And there will be similar ones, right? When something new comes along,
Right.
similar things have happened, like when a kid starts school, or when
Exactly.
This similar, right? We understand the challenge of this because we've seen similar ones,
Right.
similar seasons, and so as you do your learning claims, you'll find that similar seasons are match up, right? That
Right.
you can recognize them easier because other learning situations were similar.
Right.
So think about seasons in the next week. Watch for different kinds of actions that help you reach your learning claims. Next time, we'll wrap up our discussion of the primary lens of tuning into learning seasons with more discussions of how to apply these principles to our learning. In the meantime, send any questions or comments to learningliberated@gmail.com or share with us in our Learning Liberated Facebook group. And if this episode spoke to you, share it with someone else.
And to those of you that have already commented, we appreciate your comments.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
See you next time.